Welcome, guys, to the Conscious Health Podcast, where we're talking about how to basically help you to take your healing into your own hands and be able to realize the potential that you and everyone has within. And so today we're talking to my good friend Cami, and we're going to dive deep just into our potential and the things we can do together. So Cami, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Cami Smith. I'm an intuitive life coach and energy healer. I've been on a personal healing journey for several years now. You mentioned earlier that you had Chanel here on the podcast. Chanel has been a mentor to me over the years, and it's been a ride. It's been a really beautiful experience, and it's also had many, many ups and downs. My life has completely changed since I started doing more of the internal work. So it's been worth it.
Awesome. So I'm curious, and I actually don't remember this about you. So was like Chanel, like that first list kind of got you into this, or was it like something else you were going through? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I don't mind sharing. So it was when I was younger, I was going through a lot, and I didn't have like a healthy outlet until I found something called aerial silks. It's like what they do in Cirque du Soleil, where they dance on the silks and such. And that was one of my first healthy outlets. And I used that as a form of expression, as a form of helping me deal with things I didn't have the awareness yet of how to deal with. A lot of anger, past abuse stuff. So I really clung to that. And then a few years later got married, moved to a small town, found out there was silks in that town, so I didn't have to drive as far, and I started doing silks, in that small town. Well, I signed a non-compete and ended up getting sued because I started a YouTube channel. So long story short, that process was just under a year and a half, and I was young and insecure, and I felt very wronged by the situation, and I was like, TJ, I was scared. That was some of the most scared I had ever been. And I can feel like I get the feelings a little bit. I've healed a lot on it, but bringing it up, I do get some of the feelings again of like, that was such a scary time for me in my life. And I was desperate for change. I was desperate for help. Because I didn't know, I had never been in a lawsuit. I had never been in that much trouble by people I viewed as authority figures. I just didn't know what to expect. And there wasn't any ground. They didn't have any grounds. I did end up coming out on top at the end. But honestly, it could have not even lasted that long had I known what I know now about legal things and such like that. But it really was a blessing in my life because it brought me to a point where it was like the pressure and the compression, and I couldn't take it anymore. My only option was to make a change. And so in that desperation, something very beautiful was born. And I knew God my whole life, but I didn't know God,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, God, if you know me and you know about my situation, and there's a certain way you're supposed to speak to me to where I'm supposed to understand it, which I didn't feel like I ever really had, then please speak to me. And I surrendered big time. I was like, I will do whatever you want me to do. I will be whoever you want me to be. I will. And I even said, I will even do public speaking because that was my biggest fear. and that ended up happening quite a bit. But I just surrendered, and I was like, I will put my idea of what my life is supposed to look like aside if you help me get out of this. And in my mind, I meant within a week. I didn't know it was gonna be as long of a process as it was. But with that, I was like, listen, I'm gonna trust you're gonna do your part, and I'm gonna do mine. And that was a time in my life where I committed to some of the most change I ever had. Like I started waking up at 5 in the morning every single morning. I think I started out at 6, but my toddler at the time, he would like he could sense that I woke up. He was even upstairs, but
Yeah.
he could like sense that I was awake. So I changed it to 5 and that seemed to work. So I'd wake up at 5 and I was doing the work. Like I would meditate and my intention was to receive guidance and to learn what God sounded like when it spoke to me. I'm at a place in my life now where I don't not believe in God, but I don't really call it God. I kind of call it like creator or source. Occasionally I will use the phrase God. But with what I have been taught of what God means, it's felt very limiting.
Uh-huh.
So for me lately, I'll use like universe or source or higher power, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
But at the time it was God, and it was really beautiful because I had never experienced anything up until that point. Like I had never experienced such a willingness to put in the work and to
Yeah.
put everything that I was afraid of and everything that I thought was important aside and like just bulldoze through. And in that, like, I told God, I was like, listen, I'm going to do what you tell me to do. So, and I don't know what you sound like. I'm trying. But if I feel like you're telling me to go be a stripper, I'm going to go be a stripper. So don't screw me over. Basically, like, don't allow frivolous little thoughts to pop into my head when I'm sincerely asking you for guidance because I'm going to think that it's you. Like,
Oh
basically,
yeah.
don't don't screw me over, God. And and I would do that. Like I would sit and I would like ask a question and with the intention of whatever comes to my mind, I'm going to assume that it's you. I'm going to assume you're part of this deal and you agreed to it.
Yeah.
And I would write down like, and sometimes multiple things would come to my mind. It wasn't just like one answer. And what's interesting, TJ, is like they were subtle, like they were so quiet. They were like little whispers. It was like hard to hear.
Yeah.
So I just kind of was like, they felt like just thoughts I was making up, like
Yeah.
like my own mind talking to myself. But I was like, okay, so I'd like write them down, and sometimes I'd get like 6 to one question, and then I would kind of get this feeling of like, does any of those stand out more than the others? So it was like
Yeah.
almost a process of elimination, and like 2 would stand out, and you'd be like, hey, do those 2. And pretty much they were never anything that made me comfortable. Never,
Yeah.
never was it something that was so like in my comfort zone.
It
And
rarely is.
yeah, I learned that, and I I didn't like that, but I honestly, I can honestly say I don't think I ever would have did what it took to actually create change had I not been as uncomfortable as I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Occasionally when I think about the experience of that process of getting sued over something so stupid, like on such like on no grounds,
Yeah.
I will get a little bit irritated and I'll be like, it was so stupid. But at the same time, I do have these feelings of being so grateful because that was the introduction into my life. But I didn't know I could be who I ended up becoming from that.
Oh
So
yeah.
I also don't want to always have to attract things that big and that like compressing in order to create change. That's what I'm currently working on in my life,
Yeah.
is not needing to pull in something like so chaotic in order to like just get myself to move and
Yeah.
do the thing that is scary and uncomfortable.
Right.
The work in progress. But at the time, that was great for me. And
Oh
so
yeah.
so anyway, to kind of like uh wrap it up, I guess, I ended up doing that, and I started to gain more trust in the process. I stuck to that. I would wake up at 5, I would meditate, like I had a structure for myself because I needed that. And I would tune in, ask what I needed to do, what I needed to be aware of, and then I would act. Like, and that's actually how I got started doing life coaching and energy
Hmm.
healing. Was so you asked about Chanel, if that was the beginning, and in part I tell the story because I'm trying to remember if she came before or after. I did know Chanel before, and I want to say I think I had done a few sessions with her, not very much.
Yeah.
She mostly did sessions with other people that I knew, other relatives and such. Um, I think that's correct. Anyway,
Yeah, well,
so
if you don't mind too, for the listeners, I'll add in. So Chanel is a mutual friend that me and Cami have. She's an intuitive coach, an energy healer that's
mhm.
helped us both. So for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about here or who we're talking about, that's who we're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and she's very amazing at what she does. Part of the reason that I became such a consistent client over the years is because she would blow my mind with the things that she knew. Like, it to me, it felt like a magic trick. Like, it felt
Yeah.
like she was a psychic. And that's how I felt. Was I was like, I've never told anyone about that. How did she know? And
That's how
she,
my experiences were
yeah,
or still are.
yeah, right. Well, and did you ever have the experience where did you ever feel like you were paying for air? That's how I used to phrase it. But did you ever feel like, what am I doing? Like when you would do
Yeah,
a
I mean,
session?
that's basically like, I mean, and I think if you're doing like any type of therapy or in any real relationship where the person is giving you like unconditional true love, or they're giving that space to
Yeah.
heal, then I think that's how therapy really should be done. And yeah, like I've had that with Chanel, where it's like, she just basically gives me this love that sometimes is hard to find in the society today. This unconditional love, the type of stuff that Jesus talks about in the Bible. And so I
Mhm.
think it's so rare to find sometimes, and in certain relationships, where when you do have that space to find like let this all out, then it's
Yeah.
amazing. And especially help for someone who's willing to go in that space with you and be like, and to help you see why you're seeing the world a certain way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's very validating.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it, it's very I would say that some of the most seen I ever felt was in doing sessions with her. And so I would keep doing these sessions with her because they were working. She would know stuff that I never shared, and I know nobody would have shared it because I had never shared it. And then um things would shift and change in my life. But what was, I guess, where my faith had to come in was we were doing these sessions over the phone. So we weren't even in the same place, and sometimes not even in the same state. Because I remember doing a few sessions with her when she was traveling more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I said state, but country, like huge distance, right? And I'm like, my faith would have to come in because uh my doubt would be like, how does she, what is this doing? What is
Yeah.
this even doing? Like, we're just talking over the phone and she's just saying, like, she would identify something within me and then she would just release it with her. She would say, we can release that and let it go. And then she'd move on and I'd be like, well, did you do it? Did you release it? Like, and she's like, yeah, it's gone. I'm like, so just like
Well,
that, like
and
it,
I think too, yeah, like you're talking about faith. I think part of it too is like, well, and I realized after a while, like I remember when I first met Chanel, and this really applies to any type of therapeutic relationship. Really, it's like when you first go into it, you're like, oh my gosh, like for every issue I ever have, I can just go to her. Or
yeah, yeah,
like you like at first, at least that's happened to me. I was like, oh man, she's this like a psychic, like she's
mhm.
just so amazing. I'll always just go to
She's
her
my
for a
main
little.
guru. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And so, but after a while, and I think part of that was helpful in the sense to realize that there was someone that could be at that level of consciousness to be able to see me so well. And then it was a good
Yeah.
example for me later on to be like, oh, like the only reason she can see me so well is because she's trained herself to see her so well. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
because everyone around you is a mirror of really you,
Yeah.
then once you're able to build that mindfulness of yourself, then you have these abilities to tap into others. And so after a while, it was interesting because she was a good example for me, but then I ended up being more self-reliant.
Yeah.
And when she would say things like, okay, let's release that, I realized it wasn't just her being like, here's my magic wand, I'm gonna heal you. It was,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you permission to heal yourself and to have the unconditional love that every man, woman, and child needs to be able to actually heal.
Yeah.
So that's been my
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's like we're hanging on to things unconsciously. Like we don't realize that we're hanging on to it. And to have that permission, like we can release that and let it go. And how immediate that can be. Sometimes we have to clear a little deeper because maybe we're hanging on for whatever reason or there's more to it. But I agree, like it's very eye-opening to
Oh
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, so well, and she would explain to me over the sessions, it's energy. And I'm like, okay, like I didn't really know what that meant.
Mm.
Uh, I knew they were energy healing sessions and holistic healing sessions, but I didn't quite understand at the time. But going back to what I was sharing earlier, one of the things that God ended up guiding me to do during this lawsuit and this time of deep compression and change was to become a life coach.
Hmm.
I had only known one, well, two. I knew Chanel, but in my mind, I kind of categorized her as like a holistic healer. And then I had known one person who really called himself a life coach, and I had done one free coaching session with them one time. And and then I get this answer that said, become a life coach. And I was like, okay, like I didn't know what that meant, not to mention the inferiority complex. I felt like the least qualified person, the least qualified, especially with what I was going through. Like,
Yeah.
you know, because I've had to clear a lot and heal a lot on aesthetics, and aesthetics meaning everything. Like once I have this, the nice car, the nice house, look a certain way and whatever, tons of money, then and only then I can be a coach or a
Yeah.
healer or whatever. And God was telling me to move into that at a place that I've literally felt the least qualified ever. so, so I did though, and then God guided me to other things, said like be open to having a radio show, and then was sent in a dream, like how that would come about, came about exactly that way. But the cool
Wow.
thing was at this time of my life was I was seeking change. I was seeking healing, and I was seeking to get out of what was so uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
as a byproduct, I started to become more self-aware. I started to uh, create big change and change the overall vibration of myself. So I was elevating in ways, and then that just continued. And then eventually I did reach out to Chanel. I was doing more sessions with her
Uh-huh.
gradually, more and more. And then I reached out and I was like, hey, can you teach me how to do what you do? And I
Yeah.
started to incorporate the two, life coaching as well as energy healing. And then she's been my mentor and has become my best friend for years. So,
That's awesome. That's way cool.
yeah.
Man, I got a lot of thoughts in my head about everything you talked about. Yeah, like I guess the moral of the story that you've been talking about here, how we'll ask for certain things, and then we'll be like, God, universe, whatever, like bless us with such and such object or person or experience or whatever. And then at the same time, we have these uncomfortable situations that we're already going through, and we
Yeah.
think they're totally unrelated, but
Yeah.
in reality, everything we're looking for is actually on the other side of our fears and
Yeah.
on the other side of our uncomfortableness. And so I've realized lately that like there's not a single thing in my awareness that I can't just skip by. Like I have to go
Yeah.
through everything that's going on because I'm the source of the issues. And so
Yeah.
I'm the creator of my life. And so I'm also the creator of all the fears, all the insecurities, all the anxieties. And so it's like nobody else can, like people can guide you and help you through it,
Mhm.
whether that's a person, like I like my plant medicine, Like I like my cannabis, my shrooms, I like all that. But at the end of the day, it's like those things just guide you. But then it's really you that actually has to go through it and have the faith that it's going to turn out okay. And so that's kind of what I've learned. Like there's a tattoo on my leg that says, whatever brings you down is a clue to work on yourself. And so really anything that's going to make you shrink away from life or constrict yourself or limit yourself, that's your work to become a better person.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't know that you had that tattoo. One of your tattoos has actually been coming to my mind quite a bit lately, and it's the where focus goes, energy flows. Don't you have that on your arm?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's been coming to mind a ton, but you said something just a second ago that I wanted to share. Oh yeah, when you said like everything outside is a reflection of like we are the creator, and it's empowering to look at it in the sense of like I am creating this. I'm not gonna lie, I get really pissed off about that sometimes because I'll be like, I'm the creator. Why the heck am I creating this? Like, I'll get so mad. But it is empowering, and it has helped me a lot of times to not be the victim in the situation and be like, okay. But it was recently pointed out to me, actually by Chanel, where she had brought something to my awareness, and I said, oh, like it was very eye-opening. And I was like, I've actually been pondering on that very thing. And she's like, okay, that's interesting, because I had somewhat of a trigger to her bringing it to my awareness, a trigger at her. I had some like, I guess you could say bad feelings towards her. And she's like, hey, this is good to be aware of, because I'm bringing this to your awareness. I'm bringing you more clarity on something that you've already been pondering on. So in an area of my life, I had already been setting a new standard for myself. She was holding that standard, not knowing that I had just recently set a new standard for myself. So she was holding a boundary for me that I had recently been deciding this is going to be a new standard in my life. But then I was triggered by her bringing awareness to some energy I was throwing at her. Cool thing about having friends who are in tune with energy, they know when you're having bad feelings or bad thoughts about them. It's sometimes more than I know, because there is subtle energy. Energy's not always loud. It can be.
Yeah.
There is often subtle energies that, unless you attune yourself to them, they're easy to miss. They're subtle. But anyway, so she brought it to my awareness, like, this is a kindness. Like, this is the universe literally supporting you in what you said you wanted. Like, you already said you wanted this, and it's supporting you in that. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful shift in perspective, because she's right. Like, and it made me feel less, I guess, like a victim, less like attacked, and more like, wow, I really am being supported. Like, the universe was very quick to support me in what I communicated very in my thought process over the last few days that I wanted.
Yeah. Yep.
So, shift in perspective, honestly.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's nice when you can, like, you don't want to get like the creatorship in your head in an egoic type of way. Like, you don't want to be like, oh well, I'm going to use all these cool powers to take over people and like whatever. Like that can definitely be done, but I think a healthier way is to realize that you're the one who's creating with your perceptions. And so
Really
like things can happen to us that are bad and are not comfortable, but it's up to us to choose how we're going to go through that and how we're going to see it. And so for me, it's always just like, it's helpful to remind myself that I'm the one who's stressing or limiting myself in some way, shape, or form. Like lately, I've been really working on like just simply trusting that in each moment, the universe or God or whatever is going to give me information I need to take the next step. And so it's always in this present moment. You have everything you need to keep going. And so you're always going to be guided. It's just having the faith to open up to whatever that guidance is.
Yeah. Nice job, TJ. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I was going to say,
go for it.
Oh, thank you. That's something that I ebb and flow in and out of.
Yeah.
I consciously work on that.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a story with you too, real quick. So
Yeah.
this actually happened last night. So I have a buddy who's been struggling with addiction for a long time, and me and him, we used to like smoke weed together and stuff. And so he's like, he's just had a lot of tough life issues, and
Hmm.
so it makes sense why someone would be stuck in certain negative cycles
Yeah.
based on what they've been through. So this guy's been through a lot, and we've been best friends since we're like 10. So anyway, I decided to go visit him last night, and so we're hanging out at a park, and he's smoking stuff, and I'm telling him like, hey, just so you know, it is illegal in a park. So I was just kind of like slowly telling him like, hey, I don't care, but I'm just letting you know the police station's like just right over here. And so he's like, oh, whatever, bro, it's legal. And so anyway, and then and I do my best to help him, kind of guide him to the sense of like, hey, I like my weed too, but it might be good to change the intention and use it as something to help you out of your addiction with it, out of a codependent relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he agreed. He's like, yeah, so I've been trying to quit, but it's really hard. And then all of a sudden I just had this feeling just like go, like just leave. And it was really awkward. It was just we had just finished conversation. I was like, all right, man, well, I'll see you. Just like gave him a high five and all right, bye. And I like just walked to my car. And then so I go sit in my car and I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, like what type of friend am I? I didn't hug him. I didn't say I love you. Like I didn't stick around to do all the juicy stuff to really show that I was there for him. And just as I was thinking this, the police department, a cop car drives down right next to him. And then as I was leaving the park, another cop car was coming. So they'd already seen him. And I
Oh
guess
no.
they're on their way to come grab him just as I was leaving.
Oh
And
no.
even though I wasn't necessarily doing anything wrong, I don't want to be a part of that. And
Right.
so yeah, it's important to and I've had times too, like where I've even saved people's lives from getting hit by cars just from following that instinct of like doing these weird, really out of the blue, awkward things all of a sudden. They
Yeah.
You don't understand at first, and then you do it and you're like, oh shit, like someone like I stopped a couple from getting hit by a car once because I
Whoa.
talked to them just in time before this car ran through the red light. They
Yeah.
didn't even want to talk to me, and so I don't
Wow.
know. So I learned it was just a good reminder of like realizing like there's a higher intelligence than just my little ego, my sense of self. Like it's
Yeah.
something that if we're open to tapping into it, it's gonna help us a lot. So it was
Yeah.
cool.
I agree and that is cool. Did you like you said like you got this feeling to leave and so and then you left. Was it like when that came, was it like very conscious? Was it like I'm suddenly feeling like I need to leave? Like was there a lot of thought around it or was it kind of like in after the fact you realized like, "Oh, I totally got a feeling like I needed to leave, but I was already like just on my way acting on it."
Yeah, for me, it was actually extremely subtle. And I feel like usually those things are where it's like you think God or whatever is going to come down and like his hands going to come out of the sky and point exactly where you need to go. But really, like higher intelligence or the universe, whatever you want to call it, is really just going to give you just enough push to go to where you need to go because it is an act of faith to be open to the fact that you're not alone and
Mhm.
there's the bigger you everywhere.
Yeah.
And so no, it was really subtle, but I was just like, I just followed it. I was like, yep, I know. I feel like it's my time to go.
Yeah, and I feel like when you've kind of set the intention to be open to guidance, like you said, like you've been open to like source and being guided and knowing where to go. I feel like when you set that intention, that energy holds.
Oh
Like
yeah.
an intention is very powerful. It's a lot of people I feel like call it prayer. I feel like prayer and intention are very similar. Like you have a clear intent with something that you're communicating or a desire that you have. And so I feel like if you're somebody who opens yourself up to like receiving guidance, then it's going to come. And like you said, like it can even be a little nudge and you might not even be aware, like it might be really subtle. And then you look back and you're like, huh, I think that's what that was.
Oh
And
yeah.
you know, and it's cool because you can also get to a point where when you do that enough, like you start to recognize, you can either start to recognize the patterns or you start to recognize the subtle energies, the subtle vibrations. Like you start to attune yourself, even just by setting the intention of like, I'm going to be open to this. You attune yourself to them, and you start to understand them, and start to understand their language.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and like for me too, like you were kind of alluding to this earlier, but like just like you, I grew up the idea that God is a man in the sky who's just kind of like just doing what he does at will, and kind of like, oh, TJ's done this today, I'm gonna punish him a little bit, or oh, TJ's prayed a few times a day, oh, I guess I'll throw him some blessings. And so that's kind of how like I was raised to believe.
Yeah.
But now, like the older I get, there's and I'm not saying this in a prideful, like I'm a really powerful guy, but the older I get, the less of a difference there is between me and God. I realize that God is really just the infinite universe, and this form is a part of that. I'm like the TJ, the little me is inside the big me, which is God. And so I guess the way I've been seeing it lately is there's less and less a difference between my intuition and then God telling me something. I realize like, oh, like it is all me. We are this one big energy, the one consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's connected. A lot of times when I'm like, we'll say praying, like it is like a prayer. I'll address. I sometimes get overwhelmed with what to address because I'm like God, universe, higher power, higher self, like,
Me.
like me. They're all, but it's because they're all connected in my mind. Like they really are all connected. While also at the same time, I will experience different energies that will come through. Like there will be times where an energy comes through and it literally feels like Mother Earth. Like it literally feels distinct in that way, but it's not separate from the other ones. But occasionally different energies will come through. My higher self will come through. Sometimes that is the same as the God energy. If I were to address a God, it is the same. And then other times it's I'm not saying it's not that God energy, but it has like, I don't know, they come through with different I guess energy distinctions. Like,
Huh.
does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like
that makes sense.
yeah. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but it's like,
No, it makes sense. Like different attributes of source of
yeah,
God.
but they are all one and they are all separate.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I wanted to ask you too. So how exactly? So I know me and you have done the I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, like the tarot card reading stuff. Like I
Yeah.
remember me and you did that. Is that like your main modality you do as far as life coaching, or what? I guess what are the specific modalities and things that you help people with as far as life coaching?
Um, that's a good question. Thanks for asking. I do enjoy the tarot. But I don't use them that much. I that's kind of like a fun thing if I feel pulled. Or I'll use like oracle cards, which is less in depth than like a tarot card. But typically what I do is the reason I do call my business intuitive life coaching and energy healing is because sometimes the coaching aspect will come through a lot stronger for the individual, and it is all intuitive, and it really is catered per individual, because sometimes the coaching aspect will come through really strong, and then sometimes it will be the energy aspect really strong. There might not be any coaching, but I will feel to do a lot of energy work, whether that's verbally releasing or doing Reiki healing. I have one client in particular who I pull to a ton of Reiki healing. It's usually the combination of coaching and then a lot of body work, and that is something that I can do in person or over the phone. Yeah, and what's cool with her is she is a bit more energetically sensitive, so it's so fun. It's so cool to be like, I will just about to tell her, like I will be just about to say what area I'm working on. Let's say it's like a specific chakra. She will tell me, she's like, are you working on this area? And we're over the phone. We're not even on FaceTime. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, I am.
That's
So
awesome.
that's
That's way
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, you must be on the right track then.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very cool. Yeah, like I coach people for I can't talk. I coach people for a couple of years. Um, but lately it's been to just free up more time. I've switched more books and just helping people that way. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's awesome that you're doing that for people. That's cool. And I've had I've seen Reiki healers, then Chanel, who's like energy healer therapist.
Hmm.
I just got when did what is it called? I forgot the name. It's like the aura picture stuff. Uh,
Oh, yes, I saw that.
yeah,
Um,
so that's just pretty cool too.
yeah, what is that called? I start with a K.
Yeah. Oh, Killian photography.
Alien photography.
Yeah, but it's cool to see all these different modalities that are available now, like that you offer too, or me with books or whatever. How
Yeah,
helpful that can be for people. And it's like I'm grateful to be here in a time when we can have access to all this stuff. It's cool.
me
Awesome.
too. Have you tried hypnotherapy before?
Yeah, I've done that too.
What did you think of it?
I liked it. I mean, I did a session in Utah just before I moved back here, so I didn't do any more after that. But for me, like I'm not saying that having another person do it is a bad thing. I think if you feel called to it, do it. But for me, I went and did it. I was like, I could put myself into this state of hypnosis pretty easily just through meditation. And so for me, it's like it was cool and it's helpful. I think it's helpful if you're new to meditating and to being able to get yourself into those certain brainwave states. But
Mm-hmm.
there's ways you can do it that are much easier that I like with meditating. Like I talk a lot about this in the book that I just wrote, Stop Waiting for Heaven, where it's like you can use just one pointed focus to be able to get into those states yourself. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying that going to someone else is a bad thing. I think if you need that direction, help, it's good.
Yeah.
But for me, I was already at a point where I was like, I kind of do this myself like every day already. So it was a cool experience. But after that, I didn't feel pulled to go do it again just because I was
Yeah.
I kind of do this already. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's that. And I've had similar experience where I've had that where I'm like, I can do this for myself. Well, I've also had some experiences that I'm like, that was insane.
oh yeah, I believe it.
But I do feel that meditation is a form of it's a form of self-hypnosis essentially.
Oh yeah,
It's getting into the what is it? The theta state of mind?
yeah, yep.
Yeah, which is what you go into in hypnosis as well.
Oh
If I'm
yeah,
remembering correctly, I sometimes get the different levels of awakeness
yeah.
wrong.
Theta is usually where you're trying to go to. There's been times where I've gone into like gamma, which is like you're like having like downloads of information, and
Mhm.
you're like hyper aware. Like you can like I've had times with psychedelics and not where I've been able to reach those states where it's like you're still calm, but you're also extremely expansive and aware. So it's cool.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
is cool. I love
So yeah, as we yeah, I'm looking at the time here. So as we wrap this up, what's a good way for people to contact you if they feel pulled to hiring you as a coach?
My email's a good way. It's Kami, Kami dot Ann, ANN at outlook.com. And then I also am on Instagram. It's technically my trail name. Story for another time, but it's call me CALLME sycamore, like the sycamore tree. And I think it's call me and then a period sycamore SYCO AMORE, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, either way, I'll have it down in the description for this, your Instagram, email, and all that stuff too.
Oh, that's
So
a good idea. Thank you. It my Instagram is private, but I don't post on there a ton right now, but I do check my messages and message requests, so it's still a good way of reaching me.
cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for all the listeners and viewers who are watching this on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. Thanks for being a part of this, and I hope that you gained something from this today. And we'll see you.
Thank you, TJ.